Welcome to the Going Green podcast. This is our 100th episode. Much has happened over the last 100 episodes, but to be honest, has actually much changed. We've seen governments have agreed to this and that, these different COPs and various other things. But basically, has this made any real difference? We're looking at sort of early records. We can see the Earth's been warming up since, well, the early 1700s, and that was actually before the Industrial Revolution. So, is all this sort of climate change just due to man? Well, we are seeing it now moving at accelerated race. Accelerated race? Accelerated pace. The Earth's climate does change, of course, from year to year and decade to decade and century to century, although I think that's a bit more difficult to actually do. But basically, we are seeing a definite increase in the rate of change over the last decade or two. So, what can we do about this as a world and perhaps as an individual? What we're going to try and do over this sort of episode is we're going to look back over some of the things we've done in the last 100 or so episodes and look forward to sort of where we're going. But I'm going to start with one quick thing here, Paul.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to say that did you know that Monday, this last Monday, was the hottest day on the global average temperatures on record?
I'm surprised you said that is the hottest one on average.
Yeah, it didn't seem hot here. I know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But the other thing I will also tell you, it didn't even get mentioned in the news in the UK.
Well, yeah, I can understand why on that one. It's one of those dumb things where since it wasn't warm here, do you really want to be talking about the warm?
It was quite chilly here, wasn't it? For July, we were well below the average temperature, but it was still the warmest day globally. The global average temperature around about 17 Celsius, which was what we were really. And so we were slap bang here on the average. And if you take into account places like Antarctica, which is in its middle of its winter now and should be really cold, then some of the other countries must be really hot. And we've seen some record-breaking temperatures around the world, just not in the UK. So come on then, Paul. Let's start with looking at sort of what things have we covered that have sort of made sort of a change or have sort of been popular or have
well,
been...
this is one of those dumb things where you go through we all the 100 listen episodes. I could give a list about all the stuff we've been doing, all the way up from cyclic economies to sort of the plastic conundrum, or even sort of things like going back through sort of, talking about the COP. We talked about COP 26. We're now at COP 28 coming up. Just been how long we've been around, sort of seeing them go through. But there is a lot out there which isn't being talked about and isn't being seen by anybody, which is one of the reasons of this little podcast, is to raise awareness. And it's things like how much greenwashing there is out there.
We did a whole whole episode on greenwashing, but in fact, it's sort of
not always gotten worse, but
it's almost becoming standard, I would say.
Yeah.
Companies now are sort of all having a go at doing their own little bit of greenwashing, saying how wonderful they are without actually doing anything.
I understand half of what greenwashing is, and they're trying to basically prove their green credentials. And I've got no problem them trying to prove their green credentials, because at the same time, being green is good, However, the point is that they might be basically not lying, because that's, they don't lie. They just do not tell the truth, which is a very different statement. And basically, it goes in and says, you know, oh, we've cut down the number of paper. Correct. But of course, we still throw away a lot of paper and use a lot of paper. We just cut it down because we're using, more recyclable material or something daft like that. Or, they've changed lights. So they're now only on when people move past. Great. But of course, the moment sensors are always on, which sort of destroys the whole point of having the lights on in the first. Yeah, and it's those understanding that sort of, yes, I'm being green. I'm sort of seeing all these things happen. I'm sort of choosing. I'm choosing that bamboo fork, or I'm going to use bamboo cutlery. That's great, wonderful. Don't say always choose the bamboo cutlery over plastic. Wonderful, but then you're still out there using plastic bags or getting new plastic bags. And the answer is, or you're using those, unfortunately, disposable coffee cups still. And the answer is, but I can, how, unless I buy my own, well, that's expensive. And it is this not choice to do things, but it is one of these things where without much activism to change, people aren't going to change and companies aren't going to change. And so it's one of those odd things where, we need to force people to change, but people don't want to change themselves. So hard to really say about that. But yes, trawling through all the things, I spotted some interesting, nice things, especially in going back into our series 2. We talk about sort of all the carbon offsets. Oh, what a wonderful thing. And I'm going, they were a thing. We haven't seen we haven't heard any news about them. We haven't seen any, not changes to them, but no one's reporting, right, we bought all these initial carbon offsets, right? Have they made a difference? And the only thing is to say that is they're either not making a difference or they don't want to say they're making a difference, which is a awful thing to say.
And they don't seem to be taking any more on, do they? There's no sort of, right, we had such a success with the last lot, now we're going to do even more.
So, it is one of those dumb things of that, but half the issue we talk about going green is we say we need to do all this more investment, all these things. But we keep hitting this in saying, right, unfortunately, we're going this sort of, I say, cost of living crisis when pennies being pinched, and so people are unable to afford. Not a choice. That's the wrong way to describe it, but they're barely able to cope with things, and so the answer is, well, who's making the choices at the end of the day? And it's not consumers. They're only allowed to buy whatever they're allowed to basically buy.
We've seen some changes, though, I feel. Going peat free. We have gone more peat free. Going to the garden centre at the weekend, I couldn't buy any peat. We could only buy non-peat products, which was good. However, there is still quite a lot of peat being used, so it's things that go much slower than I think we would desperately like them to go. Uh, we still sort of see only a few houses with solar. Walking around, I don't see many new solar installations going on. We're only seeing some solar panels on some houses, and it's sort of, round about sort of one in about 300. It was about one in 300 several years ago, and it's still about one in 300.
And that's not saying that people should, but it is that solar panels have come down massively in price.
And electricity's gone up an awful lot in price. So
and so you could see sort of like what's the incentive there by sort of, and there is quite a lot of it. Unfortunately, it's sort of an upfront cost of doing all this, and that's the issue in regards to trying to get these things done. Like, it could be a massive £2,000 to put the solar panels on your roof. But that could be a holiday, and I much prefer the holiday.
And I could use a real aeroplane to take me there, which would use up quite a lot of sort of fossil fuels to get me there as well.
Yeah, and you look and say, well, surely you on the saving of electricity, the cost in your gas bill, or sorry, the electricity bill. Surely that is where you're making the savings, and therefore But people don't see that because, of course, that's just deducting money, as in creating their savings there. But they don't see that because, of course, their bill is reduced, so they don't see that they've got more disposable income to do things with. They just see, well, yeah, sure, I'm going to save some money, but I don't actually see the saving because it's not like money's been given to me. It's just less money's going out away from me. So, that's the awkward thing people talk about and say is that, I'm willing to do things if someone else forks a bill or if someone else is willing to, do most of the work, And that's one of the problems we're seeing is that people are not willing to do the work, but people are happy to change. The plastic bag tax, many people change over to reusable or, these sort of heavy duty bags. And that was great because, of course, plastic bags are being penalized. So basically the public were being forced to basically not use the plastic bags.
Yeah, because they had to pay for them.
Had to pay for them. And I'm not paying for that. Oh, it's a lot. But you look at the things that what people are willing to pay for. And it is one of those unfortunate things where, just in the news recently, of course, Thames Water, who are in bad problems, have once again been fined £3 million for the excess amount of sewage they've been dumping. It's one of those continual things that,
Yeah. I had a look at the coasts of the UK. There's a published report every now and again, and it shows where's a good place to go. And if you want to go on the south coast or the east coast of England, I'd forget it if I were you, because there were very few sites there that were actually pollution free. And you want to sort of go into the warmer water. That's sort of 5 degrees warmer than it has been other years. In other words, I think the icebergs have just melted. Yeah, especially when I put my big toe in. And it's a very good sensor, my big toe. Put it into the sort of sea. If I can't feel it within 10 seconds, then I don't go in. I don't go in. But I don't think I'd want to go in because of all this sewage, some of which you can sort of see in the
sea.
Yes, yeah. I was trying to think of how I could say that without. But yeah, it's not good. Things, some respects, have actually got worse. Or perhaps they haven't got worse. Perhaps just we now know a little bit more about it. And we're starting to sort of see this a little bit more in the papers, in the press, in the news. We've reported many times on carbon dioxide and its sort of counterpart, methane, coming out. And we're seeing that sort of still being used lots. We're still seeing an awful lot of carbon dioxide being pumped into the air. In fact, I was having a look at some figures and it was showing that basically since we've started the going green, things have actually got worse. Now, I don't think that's anything to do with us, to be quite honest. But basically, since governments have signed up and agreed to sort of cut carbon dioxide emissions and sort of plant more trees and do all these things have actually still got globally worse.
Yeah, and you sort of say all these sort of problems around sort of like, it's not just us, it's all over the place. We can't control the deforestation in the Amazon or anything like that because, of course, we're not in the Amazon or nearby it. But it is one of those odd things where all these pledges that governments make, they don't sort of yell and scream saying, We planted 5 more trees. Oh, over there's another 6. You don't see any of that. You just look at they signed up last COP, or was it the COP before, this huge deforestation bill, and not seeing that much of it. It's sort of, yes, great, wonderful that they signed up, but they're not doing anything. And people say, well, that's half the problem, which is why you see all these activism, the eco activists come out and basically try to stop everybody from doing things by trying to, raise awareness of these challenges and problems.
I think there has been more of that since we've started. In the 100 episodes, we've got now more activists going out doing more things, but they seem not to be achieving what they're really starting out to do. What they're trying to do is raise awareness and try and get things changed. What they just seem to do really is antagonize lots of people, and people sort of start to, oh, it's those irritating, and we start to ignore them.
Yeah, it's a challenge to the whole principle of activism in that regard, is that you know you're yelling loudly about something works, but causing someone to sort of get angry about it means they're getting angry at you and your technically and your cause, as opposed to actually thinking about it. This is where art pieces would be a lot better. Or let's say you do some advertising by putting posters and books, bus stops, and sort of all over the place. Might that make more of an impact? But then at the same time, that costs money, as opposed to all the public acts of, I say, the public acts of defiance. Right? Those things are not cheaper. That's the wrong way to put it. But it only involves the person's time and effort, as opposed to someone affording all the billboards and all those sorts of things.
Well, it is sometimes doing that. It is making conscious decisions not to do things. Can you do things? I'm looking back at podcast number 8, where we did What is the Green Revolution? And we talked about what could we do? How could we improve carbon capture? Could we move to more renewable energy? Well, we have slowly, but it has been very slow. The amount of sort of increase in wind production, it's not been meteoric really, and it was, and this country sort of has slowed down. We've got perhaps a prime minister who's not quite so sort of interested in renewable energy as he is trying to do perhaps something else. I don't know what that is, but I'm stating that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll glance over that. Yeah.
Yeah. But basically, we still have to remember that electricity has shot up in the time that we've been doing these 100 episodes. And so I did expect to see more solar panels, and not really. I am seeing more people saying, yes, you've got to put batteries onto your system, because this is now a way they can sort of get even more money from me. I still can't see that that's actually worth it for us.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those interesting cases. It's just how things go. But it is that idea that people say, "Oh, you're going to get all these savings." Great, wonderful, but I'm not going to see those savings. Therefore, I'm not proud. They're not really seen. You almost want someone to basically hand you a check every month and do that, and that actually might see people getting better. Which is not saying it's wrong, but it is one of those things where all these problems could be solved by more solar panels, getting solar panels on. When gas was expensive, you sort of we saw, right, is that time for heat pumps?
Or hydrogen.
Or even hydrogen production. It was to basically pour money that way. And basically people just lumped it and left it. They didn't want to, they weren't offended so much but they decided to change everything. And one of the dumb things, of course, is that most people can't change immediately. They need other people like government or even industry to change first to build that infrastructure
Yeah,
to do so.
things like electric vehicles. There are now more electric vehicles. Norway now is selling more electric vehicles than, well, anything else. We are starting to see electric buses, electric lorries, and electric cars are now quite commonplace on the roads. Trying to actually get them to sort of charge them up, that's a different story. But we are seeing some changes there. And one of the changes that I was looking at was very simply something that was sort of appealed to me that I saw sort of this week. And what I saw this week, he says, having lost it, was basically that it was Toyota, and Toyota have managed to, well, they're claiming that they've made a battery breakthrough, and they've got a new solid state battery with a range of, and I had to look it up, 745 miles. And the best bit, you can charge that in 10 minutes.
Wow.
And that could be really a major sort of breakthrough. And if you could have cars with a long range and that charge, well,
Relatively quickly. We're not, as quickly as, putting gasoline into a car or petrol car at the moment.
petrol, Paul.
Sorry, petrol, yes, not gasoline. Yeah, you'll hear. Anyway, but it is that sort of, you can fill it up. Yes, it's be 10 minutes, but it's 10 minutes as opposed to, say, an hour and a half or.
Well, a friend of mine's got a car, and he says he drives somewhere and he charges it up, and it takes him about 30 to 45 minutes to charge his car. And he said he doesn't argue with that one. What he does argue with the fact is he's got a queue for 2 hours before he can actually charge his car for that amount of time.
Because there isn't not enough chargers. And this is the whole thing of who's in charge of putting the chargers in. And, is it, say, local councils? Is it government? Is it sort of land developers? All these sort of people. And basically, they like handing it off to other people and saying, no, it's not our job to do it. It's someone else's job to do it. You go, well, where does the buck end? Because if you hand it off to this person, they hand it off, and sort of you all go around in a circle passing this paper, the paper doesn't stop. And so, so it is where leadership, or someone needs to take leadership on doing these things and actually show a little bit of grit and determination to do these things. Because it's not like it's impossible or difficult, it's just not coordinated thinking. That's the wrong way to put it. But the idea that, it's someone else's problem, we can't do it, it's going to be someone else to do it. Well, surely it could be you. Why aren't you not demanding more car parking charging stations? Why aren't you writing a letter every week to your councillor? The same letter, obviously, about why is there not enough electric cars, and maybe that way is a way to persuade them that you actually care. That if they get, I see lots of voices, there's that person once again asking for those electric car chargers, and then maybe if it's sort of a lot of letters saying, maybe we need to do something about this, those sorts of things. Perhaps community action is required to do so. Write to your MPs. Take actually not interest, but actually say, what about these things? Getting all these changes involved. Basically moaning at the people who are in charge of making the changes, and get them not interested or invested, but sort of motivate them to actually make a difference.
Yeah. Back in series 2, episode 19, we did the title, Can We Avoid 1.5? And the idea was we were hoping with the COP and all the other bits and pieces to sort of say that we're going to do well. But then we reported there was a 50-50 chance that the climate would be more than 1.5 in the next 5 years. And it appears that this year we could actually achieve that. Uh, and it was, within what the Met Office said, within the next 5 years, that's 2 years. And that's, yeah, that is well within the 5 years, a 50-50 chance. And, we're doing really quite well there. Except I thought it was what we were trying not to do. Whereas, we were trying to get down from this. We're currently at 1.2. We're approaching 1.5. Can we stop 1.5 as opposed to could we achieve 1.5, which is what we seem to be trying to do at the moment.
Yeah, it is one of those hard things to really say about sort of, trying to do this. But it is this basically, are we slowing down or are we getting faster? And the honest point about that is that we're actually getting faster. And that's sort of one of those dumb things to say. But if all these actions are taking place, surely we should be slowing down. And the answer is no, we're speeding up. And no one's hit the sort of the panic button in relation to we're speeding up, time to hit the brakes,
Well, in fairness, the World Health Organization, the UN, all of these different international bodies are all banging the drum saying it's basically almost too late. We've got to do something. And the other countries are going along just saying, oh, I paused at that point. Yes, because that's what they're saying. Nothing. They're not responding to this. They're not saying, oh, yes, we ought to do something. It's just, oh, yeah, just shut up and go away. We want to carry on with the important thing. We've got to worry about our community, our economics, our profit. And, you mustn't sort of offend people. We've got a lot of consequences, though, about doing nothing. Doing nothing isn't an option. We did this in episode 25 in series 2. And what are the consequences of doing nothing? And by and large, Paul, I think we're actually seeing those today.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the not a gripe, but that's unfortunately the thing. We are seeing this list, which I said we wrote or we researched about the consequence of doing nothing, and that we're slowly ticking them off. We shouldn't be. The problem is we shouldn't be ticking these off. We should be saying, sort of right. Our checklist is sort of all these things are saying, increase CO2. We shouldn't be ticking these off. We should be sort of crossing them out and saying, right, we have managed to stop the CO2 production, or we have managed to increase our solar panel or, and renewable energies so that we're using less fossil fuels, or we've managed to cut fossil fuels in half. But at the same time, we do this, let's say we sort of do all these wind turbines, cut our energy demand in half. That's great. That's wonderful. But then the problem is you've got other countries, and I'm saying sort of, other balmy countries like France. France makes it all power 70% by nuclear energy. Great, wonderful, very clean. Not necessarily green, but we'll glance over that one. But it is all clean electricity. But what about the other 30%? And the answer is, oh wait, they use coal power. And it's not like they've got this small percentage where they're converting the coal to gas. No, they're not even talking about that. No, they're still burning the coal. And the answer is, well, could they not be changing that 30% to renewables? They've got their major power, which is all the nuclear, and they're only trying to change this small proportion, this 30%, bigger than others, right? But surely that's what they should be doing. But they don't want to.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of apathy and resistance to change. People don't want to sort of change that much. I said at the start, basically, much has happened over the last 100 episodes, but really not much has actually changed. They promised this, they promised that, but we're not seeing really any action. We hear this, we hear that, but we don't see much going on. We've seen sort of things like our ozone layer sort of starting to be repaired with, as the CFCs have sort of disappeared. But now we're seeing other things starting to replace them. Because, there's this little loophole, and so we can get away with doing that. Things aren't changing in this world. Basically, we need more food. We need more water. We need more resources. And resources are running out. We find that we are struggling to get fresh water in certain places, including the UK at times.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah. We're having problems trying to make basically renewable electricity. We're having problems going to get rid of all the fossil fuels because, well, other countries are making it sort of still more sort of economical to still stay with petrol and other fossil fuels. So things are changing, but generally things are changing way too slow, and things are still getting worse here. So over the last 100 episodes, we can honestly say that I don't think we've really gone very green.
No, we've probably gone sort of a very greyish colour, really.
So let's hope for a better future as we start our journey on to episode 200. Well, I
Oh,
don't know if we're going to make that, but we'll try. Bring you weekly information about going green. So until next time, it's goodbye from me.
and a goodbye from me.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.